Welcome to the J&J Sip and Say. Jill, what's going on?
What up?
What you drinking today?
Another tequila sunrise.
I have a screwdriver, which is orange juice and vodka, and we're just supporting the orange juice cocktails tonight.
So apparently we're just craving some orange juice, I guess.
Getting our vitamin C in.
Yeah, I didn't have a piece of fruit today, so this
There
is
you go.
my
Yeah,
fruit.
that's healthy. So over the weekend, you accomplished a goal that you've been wanting to do for quite a while. You ran your first 10K, which is 6.2 miles, on Saturday morning.
I did.
And that's something you've been wanting to do for quite a while, but you kind of been physically unable to because of a foot issue. And what exactly did you have problems with your feet about a year ago when you thought you wanted to run one, but just didn't feel like you could?
Well, I've always had these feet issues ever since I started running 9 years ago. I got into running and easily worked myself up to a 5K distance and was trying to go farther, get up to 4 miles, and I noticed that every time I would run 3.5, 4 miles, my feet would fall asleep. And it would always start in my left foot. And it would never go up my leg or anything like that. And I mean, the feeling when your feet fall asleep.
It's hard to walk.
Yeah. It gets real heavy. Your feet go numb. You get that just kind of stepping on needles.
The tingly.
Yeah, type thing. And you get to a certain point and your feet they feel like they weigh 10 pounds. And when I was really into running, when I first started, I would just try to, push through. Why is this happening? Maybe it'll go away after a little bit. And it just never did. And during my run, it would only slowly get worse. But once I would stop running, probably within a minute, it would stop. And okay, well, maybe I can, walk longer distances. And it seemed like when I would run and I would stop to walk and I would start to run again, it would just come back, and it would come back even quicker. So I was just kind of, threw my hands up in the air and, maybe I'm just not physically built to do anything longer than a 5K.
Yeah, I could tell you're really discouraged because you had the drives to go out and do the training and the motivation to go out and sign up for a 10K. And I think your ultimate goal was a half marathon, which is 13.1 miles.
Right. Because, and I hate to compare myself to other people, but I see these other people and I hear these other people like, yeah, I worked my way up to a half marathon, and I'm not trying to sound judgy, but I'm like, okay, if you can do it, I can do it. But I couldn't do it.
Right.
And that was so frustrating. And no matter how much I ran or how much I tried to train for something longer than a 5K, I could just never do it.
So at what point did you kind of feel like there was something maybe medically that you could do, or did you go to like a foot doctor, or kind of how did that process start?
Well, do you remember when I tried to go to like an orthopedic doctor like 6 years ago?
Vaguely.
Well, I did. And they did a bunch of tests on me, some that even included sticking needles in my feet, just to see if there was a nerve issue. And nothing ever came of it. I even went and saw a doctor in Indy, and the only explanation he could give me was my Achilles tendon was too tight, and that when you're running, you're constantly stretching that Achilles tendon. And when it gets overstretched while you're running, it can cause numbness. And I never did go back to that doctor. It's probably my fault. I guess I just wasn't satisfied with that answer. And so again, I just went back to my normal, okay, I'll run, 2 to 3 miles, 2 to 3.5 miles. And just every time, once I kind of hit the 3 mile mark, my feet would fall asleep, and I would just deal with it till I wanted to be done with my run, which, wasn't much past that.
And then you got pregnant, had Blair, and then you started having all sorts of back pain, when he was little, I know carrying the baby seat around didn't help, and lugging him around probably didn't help that the back issues either.
I had some back pain while I mean, well, I'm going to go out of order here a little bit. I had seen two chiropractors in the past, two different chiropractors. And I don't feel like they ever really helped me that much. It was just kind of one of those, oh, come in when you feel like it type thing. I never felt like they really addressed my issues. It was kind of just.
Because I know chiropractic care kind of has that used car salesman mentality some people have of it.
And so going back to what you're saying, I just wanted to preface that saying that I have been to two chiropractors before. And so I've always kind of just had back pain in general. And when I was pregnant, I think most moms can attest to this, your back hurts. And, once I had Blair, it didn't get any better. And I think, in fact, it got worse. And, I mean, there would be times where, he was only not even 7 pounds when he was born. And there would be times where I could just physically not hold him any longer because my back. And I would just be sitting in bed trying to hold him. And I mean, I'd almost be in tears. My back hurt so bad. And how I stumbled upon my current chiropractor is a random story. You already know what it is. But my back hurt so bad when I was pregnant, and you couldn't crack my back because I couldn't lay on my stomach, and you couldn't even hardly hug me hard enough to crack my back. So what I would do is I would watch these YouTube videos of other people getting their adjustments.
I hated those videos. There's certain things that just hearing someone's back and neck get cracked, it made me cringe. I would leave the room. But I understand you enjoyed them. So.
It was like I was living vicariously through these other people. And I actually kind of like got into that. I mean, they were very fascinating. I mean, it wasn't just watching a compilation of, people getting adjusted. I started watching certain chiropractors that I liked and how they did their adjustments and how they did their exams.
You were doing almost research.
Sort of, by watching the videos, yeah. Because they would explain a lot of things. And there were a few chiropractors that I stumbled upon, and I just really liked their videos and their technique and how they were very thorough in what they were doing. It wasn't just oh, my back hurts here. Okay, let me pop you right there, and all right, you're good to go. That's not how it worked for them. And there's one doctor, I can't even pronounce his name, but he's out in Los Angeles, and he's the one that I got watching the most. And at the end of his videos, there would always be a logo that would pop up, and it would say Gonstead Chiropractic. So I Googled, because I'm like, is that his office? His practice name? Is it a technique? What is it? And so I Googled it, and it's a certain specific technique in chiropractic care. And so I just, on a whim, Googled, I'm like, okay, does Muncie have one of those? And because I thought about going back to a chiropractor, but after the first two I'd had, I'm like, well, they didn't really help. How are they going to help me now? And I was able to find one that specifically practices Gonstead. And his name is Dr. Vu at Cardinal Clinic of Chiropractic. I'm just going to go ahead and give him a shameless plug. I started seeing him. Well, I've loved my experience there from start until now.
Blair was probably only a couple months.
He was like 8 weeks old.
8 weeks, yeah.
Because I remember it being, my first visit was on Valentine's Day, so he was just not quite 2 months old yet. So I looked up, I kind of wrestled with it in my mind. I'm like, okay, do I do this? Do I not do it? I didn't know what you would think of it. And so I called.
I was skeptical, I'll be honest, because
right.
I had heard, the chiropractors that want you to see every week, and you have to be on there, and it just costs a lot of money, and really don't get results.
Right, and I didn't know what you would think, and frankly, I didn't know what to expect either. So I called, and explain my situation. You wanted to be a new patient. And the office manager, her name's Misty, she goes, well, how, and thinking, I'm like, well, it might take a couple weeks for me to get in as a new patient. She's like, well, how about tomorrow? And I'm sitting there thinking, okay. I said, I have an 8-week-old baby. Can I, bring him with me? Yeah, sure. Bring him. So, okay. I went the next day and had my exam. And I guess this kind of, I wrote down some notes on why this specific type of chiropractic is different than others. And so I'll just go into that as it relates to my first exam. So my first exam, what they do is you're in a hospital gown. You still have your pants on, but you're in a hospital gown from the waist up. And they'll take x-rays of you. After being at 2 chiropractors, I never had x-rays done. And now looking back, I'm like, well, that should have been a red flag right there. Why not take x-ray? Why not be able to see the problem? You're going to be able to see where your joints and your bones are out of alignment. So he did x-rays. And then he takes this thing called, and Dr. Vu, if you ever listen to this and I mispronounce something, just, don't get mad at me.
We're not doctors here.
Yeah, don't get mad at me. This was like a very quick Google Wikipedia search. And it's been so long since my initial exam, and after him explaining all that stuff to me, I don't remember all the technical terms. But from what I could find, it's called a nervoscope. And I think I've shown it to you in a YouTube video. You're in a seated position, and it's on your bare back. So like I said, you obviously have a hospital gown on in the front. You don't have your bra on or anything. And it's this little, almost looks like a big compass with 2 prongs sticking out of it. And he sticks those prongs and runs it along your back, along your spine, from your neck all the way down to your pelvis. And what this nervoscope does is it detects heat in the muscles and the joints around your spine. And those heat signals can indicate inflammation where there's a misalignment. And so what it does, it's leveled out at 0, and it's either going to ping to the left or ping to the right, depending on where that misalignment is. Or technical term that he uses is subluxations. I can't even say it right.
Layman's term is fine.
Misalignment, sure. And like I said, Dr. V, if you ever listen to this, sorry if I mess any of it up. I'm trying to explain it to you, I guess, the layman's terms. And so he runs it up and down your spine, and he can detect where it pings off of. And I believe the degree, it's like 25 degrees to the left or 25 degrees to the right. And I'd say most people, they're probably going to have maybe like a 5 on the left or right. I think that's probably a little bit normal. Mine initially were over 20, where I had my misalignments.
So you had some serious misalignment issues.
Yes.
Now he took x-rays that first day, right?
Right. Yeah. X-rays and then this nervoscope thing. I want to say he said I had 3 like very big misalignments. 1 in my neck, my upper back, and then in my pelvis. And before I continue with these criteria that the chiropractors use, I had always been told that my legs were different lengths. Now I know anatomically, I know my legs are not 2 different lengths, but it's where your pelvis sits and your hips sit. And some people, even I've had even massage therapists tell me that, because they'll be working on my feet and they'll see one leg is shorter than the other. Or I've had my seamstress, she's hemmed pants for me, and when she goes to hem them, they're 2 different lengths, because it's wherever she pinned them from where I was standing. And I could never notice that myself because it was very minimal. But towards the later part of my pregnancy, I could physically feel that one leg was
Yeah, I
shorter
can
than the
just tell
other.
the way you walked
Right.
was
I mean,
off.
it was like I was swinging my right leg out. And it was the worst when I would get out of, like if I had to get up out of the bed and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Yeah, you almost like walk in circles because
I wouldn't say it was that bad. And I that's why kind of struck me. I'm like, something's off. I should not be walking like this. I should not have to physically feel like I'm swinging a leg out.
right.
And so that's where the misalignment was in my pelvis. Another thing they do is visualization. So they'll look at your posture in your movement. And he had me stand in front of a mirror and see if I could tell. And I could look in a mirror and actually look and see that my left shoulder was higher than my right. Yes. Now I don't even know. It's been so long. Anyways,
You were crooked.
yeah, I was crooked. One shoulder sat higher than the other. And another thing, I remember him saying this. He's feeling. That's another part of their criteria. They feel your spine and they feel your muscles. And he said, I think that's when he asked, he's like, "Is your husband here?" I said, "No." He's like, "Okay, well, he needs to come back in when we meet tomorrow." And I'll get to that part of the story in a little bit. But he told me, he goes, your muscles should feel kind of spongy. There should be there should be some give to them when I press on your back, and especially my upper back. And he's like, yours literally feels like a brick wall. He's like, there's no give to it at all.
So it sounds like this type of chiropractic care, it's a lot more in depth. There's a lot
Yes.
more evaluation and not
Mm-hmm.
just pushing on the back or realigning. Just it's actually an evaluation.
It's a
And
complete evaluation.
so
I
you had a
guess.
complete evaluation, and then obviously the X-rays,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually called you back in the next day with me.
Right. I remember calling you, and I said, I'm like, well, you're gonna have to come back in with me tomorrow. And you're like, why? And I'm like, I don't know why. He just told me to have you come in with me. So my next appointment, very next day. So again, I, called on a Tuesday, got in on a Wednesday, and was able to see my X-ray results on a Thursday. That's how quick
And
he was with these.
and that's when it kind of struck me of how much pain and how out of line you were when you can see it up on an X-ray.
Right. So that next day, you came with me to my appointment, and he was able to pull my X-rays up on a big screen for both of us to look at. And here I am. I have an 8-week-old baby. I'm super sleep deprived. I probably feel like crap just from how sleep deprived I am, and from all my body issues, back issues. And I didn't know what he was going to say. I didn't know if he's like, "Oh, you're beyond help," or "You have to have surgery," or I had no idea what he was going to say. And now knowing him, a year and a half later, he was very serious during that first meeting, I guess, with me and you. And I remember him saying, he's like, "Do you want me to just give it to you straight or sugarcoat it?" Well, obviously, just tell me what we're doing here. And he said, "You have a degenerative disc disease." And that means my discs and the spaces between the discs in my back were just all jacked up. And he said, this isn't something that was caused by your pregnancy or giving birth. He's like, that it just made it worse. He's like, this is something that you've been dealing with for the past 10 to 15 years. And he's like, I'm going to tell you, probably if you let this continue and not seek this care, he's like, you probably will have to have surgery in probably 10, 15 years if it got that bad.
Yeah, he was very honest, but he also was very optimistic that, hey, let's get almost a game plan together, not just, hey, come see me every week. It was
right, or come see me when you're in pain.
And that's what I was impressed with, because I was like, okay, this guy, he's visually we can see there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, let's lay out a plan here. I think you went every week for
right. Well, before I get to that, another, I guess it'd be a symptom that really stood out to me was my back almost bowed out when it's not supposed to do that. And I would see it where I'd look at myself sideways in the mirror, and I'm like, I don't know why my back looks like that now. I'm like, is it like fat? Is it is it muscle? Why does it look like that? And another thing I saw is my low back. I could turn one way in the mirror and then turn the other way in the mirror, and I'm like, that doesn't look even.
So,
And this was all before I started
yeah, so
seeing a chiropractor.
you knew something was wrong,
right?
But he was able to really evaluate it and, like I said, when he put it up on the X-ray, it's like, okay, there's an issue here,
right? Because he was able to. It was almost like he took measurements of where like the baseline should be of your, I guess you could just call it like an X and Y axis, and where like mine was and how much everything had shifted. And he did my first adjustment right there in front of you. I don't know what your reaction was to that, but I remember he adjusted my low back and my pelvis first. And this is one where, and I know not a lot of people have ever been to a chiropractor. I know they probably get freaked out by them. This adjustment, he lays you on your side and kind of rotates your hip over and just kind of pulls on your lower back to adjust it. I don't know what you remember, but it was so loud. And I just looked at him and he looked at me. He's like, you needed that so badly. I was like, I can tell. And just a quick side note for people that are skeptics of chiropractic, your bones aren't actually cracking. That is just kind of a myth. The noise that you hear, it's gas being released from your joints. Because there are times that I get adjusted by him and there's not that release. And obviously, I still get adjusted. All that is it's a gas being released versus, your bones aren't actually cracking.
Right.
It's just a term people use, I guess.
So you started, that first day after the X-rays, you started getting adjusted. It was like weekly. Then it went, I think, every couple of weeks. You had like a layout over the next, year?
Yeah,
you would basically go in.
Yeah,
he would adjust
I don't
you.
think it was that appointment. It probably was the next appointment I went to. Yeah, he developed what he calls a care plan. And I was supposed to see him for 4 weeks, 3 times a week. And it worked out fine because I was still on maternity leave. So it wasn't a big deal to go and see him. I mean, it was kind of like Blair and I's outing for the day was, to get ready and go see the chiropractor. So I saw him 3 times a week for 4 weeks. And then it was twice a week for 4 weeks, once a week for 4 weeks. And then every other week. And then once, I'm down to once a month. And I have, his care plan was for a year. And so when my care plan was up in February, now I'm just in kind of a maintenance phase. I go once a month and that's it. I was able to get, I think, 4 sets of x-rays that first year, and you can physically see the progress. That's where the x-rays are different than from other chiropractors that don't do x-rays. Yeah. You can actually see the visual progress of where you're at.
So you went through this process still. I mean, you still get, you're still going once a month or so just kind of get checked up. But when did you notice when you started running that, hey, this feels different?
I'd say maybe late last spring, early summer, because I still wasn't doing much running last spring just because I was, still not that far out from having Blair. And I did go back to work for those 10 weeks. And so trying to find time to actually run, I'd say maybe early last summer when I actually finally worked myself up again to 3.5. I remember running 4 miles last summer, and I texted Misty, the office manager, and I said, I just ran 4 miles and my feet didn't fall asleep at all. Because there would be times beforehand that I could run maybe 3.5, but it'd always be on the verge of falling asleep. You know what I mean? Like I could tell if I had ran any farther, it was going to start. I could run last summer 4 miles, and there was never an inkling that it was going to happen.
So from last summer, you obviously continued working out over the winter, and then you got to the spring. And when did the first decision decide, like, hey, I want to go for this 6 mile run?
I think probably early this spring when I was running 4.5, 5 miles and not having any issues. I'm like, I can do this. What's another, half mile more? And to be honest, I could have, on Saturday was the very first time I had ever ran 6.2 miles.
What was your goal?
My time?
What was your time goal? Yeah.
Oh, an hour and 15 minutes. I ran it an hour and 13 minutes. But that was the first time I had ever ran 6.2 miles. And the only reason I had not ran that far before is every time I run, I push Blair in the stroller. And he's done after about an hour, if a little bit more than that. I knew I could physically do it. And I know I can physically run more than 6 miles. It's just that Blair kind of holds me back, to be honest.
Well, we had a beautiful morning because it was about 65 degrees when the race started. How did the race go for you? How was your mentality, when it started, and just kind of your approach to all 6 miles?
I think my mentality was I just wanted to do it. And I knew I could. Like I said, I had been consistently running, 4.5, 5.5 miles and no problems. So I knew I could physically do it. It was just accomplishing it and doing it in a race. And sometimes when I run 5Ks, I kind of pick people out and I'm like, oh, I'm going to keep up with that person. Or, oh, no, that person just passed me.
Like you said, it's a bad idea to compare yourself to other people.
Oh, I know. But also, I mean, it's a little bit of motivation, too. If you're like, oh, that person just passed me, I got to keep up with them. But for this, I literally I went out and I ran my own race. I didn't care who passed me. I didn't care who I was behind. I just went out and I did it. And do I wish I had gotten a little bit faster time? Yeah, but and I know I could have. You always look back on your races. You're like, yeah, I could have ran that faster. But I just wanted to do it and enjoy it because I never thought I would ever physically be able to do that.
So now that you've had the chiropractic care and you're back in alignment, your feet aren't falling asleep, you've done one, and you went out, you just mainly want to finish, no problems. So what's the next step? Is it another 10K with a better time? Are you going to go shoot for a 13.1 miler?
Well, I obviously want to do more 10Ks now that I know that I can do it. I think my goal has always been to run a half marathon. I just never thought that was in the cards for me. And for a while, I just had to come to terms with that. And it stunk, but what was I going to do? I mean, I physically could not run any farther. I mean, my feet literally, I mean, they almost hurt. They would fall asleep so bad if I just kept running. And so I think possibly the goal maybe next spring, for sure maybe by next fall, to do a half marathon. And like I told you after my race on Saturday, I finished. Did I even look like I was out of breath?
You weren't too bad, no.
I told you Saturday, I said I could have, it was an out and back course, and if the people doing the half marathon had to do the out and back course twice, I said I feel like I could just go and run that again. Now, that wouldn't have been smart because I probably would have hit, maybe 9-10 miles and then be like, why did I do this?
Hit the wall.
Right. And like I told you, that's where you injure yourself, is when you try to up your miles.
Right. Too
quick, I guess. But I could have easily probably ran another mile and a half and not have, I wasn't even hardly out of breath. And like I said, I just went and ran.
But you had trained a lot.
Right,
You had ran a lot over the last 2 months.
Right. I just went out and ran my race and enjoyed it because, like I said, I didn't think I would ever physically be able to do that.
So another 10K this fall?
If I can find one.
There's some out there.
I know, yeah, they're all over the place.
I've been looking for you.
And I feel like there's 5Ks all the time.
Yeah, every weekend there's multiple ones in this area.
Right. And I know people are skeptical of the chiropractic care, and I don't want to be one of those people that, the only reason I'm doing 10Ks is because I saw a chiropractor. But it kind of is. I mean, I was doing everything I could to not have my feet. I mean, I was buying new shoes. I was trying new socks. I was trying how to lace my shoes. I was trying, different running form. Nothing was working.
Yeah, but it seems like in chiropractic care, it's like everything else. There's good and bad. There are guys
Right.
out there trying to just get as many patients as possible to come see him as often as possible to get X amount of money. And then there's like your chiropractor actually lays out a plan over an extended period of time. And then after that time, almost a maintenance plan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot more in depth and detailed than just, hey, come see me once a week so I can crack a few bones.
Right. And now that I'm in a maintenance phase, pretty much what he does to me every time is the same. But there are times I have issues. And I don't think I touched on this yet, but the reason why my chiropractor said my feet were falling asleep, the main reason was because the bone on the top of my foot was out of place. And it almost raised up. And I think I explained this to you on Saturday. It was raised up, which was putting pressure, on my shoe too. And when you run, your feet swell a lot, especially, when you're getting up in miles. Your feet swell. And so when my foot would swell, that bone and my laces, it would just put pressure on that bone and those nerves. And that's what would cause my feet to go numb. Because I explained my issue to him, because he didn't really look at that issue the first, I don't know, maybe 2 months that I went to him. There were other more drastic issues with me. And so I think I told him, I was like, yeah, I want to get back into running a little bit more. And I told him my issue. And he's like, okay, well, let me take a look at your feet. And because typically they don't look at your feet a lot. I mean, they'll adjust your ankles and your knees if need be. But typically, unless there's a need, they don't look a lot at your feet. So he, took my shoes off and was feeling around on my feet. And he, just kind of twisted my foot a certain way and popped that bone back into place. And he's like, that should take care of it. And I've not had any issues since.
Well, it was awesome to see your reaction when you crossed the finish line. I can tell you were very proud, not just your accomplishment, but that you were actually able to do it, and you didn't think you were going to be able to. So it was a lot of fun watching, and maybe we can do some sort of challenge if this podcast gets enough downloads or likes or something. I'll run a 10K with you.
For sure, yeah, you can for sure train for a 10K.
Yeah, but I'm not much of a runner.
Well, I never was
but
either.
It was
growing
inspiring
up.
to see you get out there and do it. I'm like, well, I could do that. We can go out and train together and run a race together. So,
And I think what made me so, not that I was like super emotional when I crossed the finish line, but I kind of had chills, is you always see people, they go by this saying, if you just put your mind to it, you can do anything.
and that's a gray area.
Well, I know. And that's what I'm getting at is I had my mind set that I was going to run longer races. And like you said, I had the motivation. I had the endurance. I just could not physically do it. And it was so unbelievably frustrating to just have something that holds you back that you can't do anything about.
Yeah, because I had actually got running quite a bit a few years ago and considered a half marathon, but I was like, I hate to do one because she really wants to do one even more than I do, and I don't want to do it just because. And I mean, you'd be happy for me, but I understand
there'd be
little,
like a tinge of me that'd be a little
but
jealous.
Now that you're there, maybe next spring we can knock out a half.
We can do that.
So, well, it's a cool story, Joe. I was really happy for you. It was fun to see you get out and all the training you've been doing, and that's what people don't see or don't hear about is the amount of running you did every week over the last couple months. It's been very intense for you, and to see you get out and run and have a good time, beat your time, and said just have a great Saturday after accomplishing that. So,
and thanks to Blair, because he, every time I run, it's with him pushing the stroller. So he has to put up with my
pushing that stroller is the extra training. So, well,
maybe, awesome. Real quick, maybe that's why I felt so good during my races because I wasn't pushing.
It probably helped, especially on those hills.
Yeah.
So, well, awesome job. Like I said, I just really happy for you and proud of you that you were able to go out and do something you didn't think you'd be able to. So, if you have body it, knee joints, or see doctors, see what you can do. If you can, great. If not, try to if you couldn't have done a 6 or a 10K, you could have tried to improve your 5K times.
Right.
And
And
do what you can do.
that was one reason why I started trying to do triathlons too. Because I'm like, well, maybe I'm not going to be a long distance runner, but maybe I can do a triathlon or something.
Now you can do both.
Yeah.
So awesome job. Let's cheers it out here. Cheers.
Make it a great day and sip and say.